But has Donald Trump let down the people of Iran with no further decisive action at this stage, as an autocratic and theocratic regime kills its own people? Let's get the views, if we can, of Errol Moorcoach, who is from Republicans Overseas, and Colonel Simon Diggins, who's a military and defence analyst. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Errol, what is your reaction to the fact that at this point, Donald Trump has metaphorically and literally held fire?
Well, I think it speaks to the restraint that he's promised to show. The speak softly and carry a big stick. When and where to apply it has been in his purview. Obviously, in this situation, he's not willing to cross that line yet. Removing a narco-terrorist like Maduro is far different than removing the Ayatollah, who's part of the clerical elite of Shia Islam. It's much more akin to something along the lines of removing Emperor Hirohito or killing him versus what they did in World War II. So you have a desire not to create a ton of martyrs and a ton of, extrapolated issues from this conflict. So I think that's where the hesitation comes, and we'll see if President Trump continues to hold back.
Do you think that, Mr. Moorcoach, that the president overplayed his hand when he told the people of Iran, help is coming?
I think a little bit. I think that some of it also is gamesmanship. On one hand, he's trying to see how far the Iranian people can push it on their own, and ideally that change comes from within. So if you topple the Ayatollah from within, the optics and the way this works is much different than if it's from the outside. The whole time, obviously, we do have intelligence services who are involved. So just again, it depends how far is Trump willing to go this early in the demonstrations.
Colonel Simon Diggins, welcome to Talk Breakfast. Why do you think the president hesitated in terms of any decisive action in Iran?
Mark, good morning to you, and Ms. Moorcoach, good morning to you too as well. I think there are a couple of other issues as well, but I agree what Ms. Moorcoach talked about just then. I think one of the things was actually straightforward force protection. I mean, the weapon system of choice for the Iranians is ballistic missiles, and despite the writing down of their air defences and also their nuclear program in June and July with the Israelis, they still have some 3,000 plus ballistic missiles. And they made quite clear that it would not only attack US bases in the region, which might also have affected UK forces, but they'd also go after the countries in which we're hosting those. So they go after Qatar, they go after Saudi Arabia. And I think the Americans didn't really have the kind of force protection in place to both launch attacks on Iran itself, and then secondly also then deal with the necessary counterattack that would come their way. So I think that was one of the issues. And I think that the other thing was, and we referred to it in your opening brief, the countries around were concerned of what the fallout was going to be. There is some quite strong evidence that one of the things that's happening in Iran at the moment is some of the kind of vociferous elements of it. The minorities who live within Iran were using this as an occasion to try and split off. And there is a concern, I think, about refugee movement and the country kind of falling apart. So the consequence management of this, as well as, well, what are you going to target? You go after Khomeini, you go after the IRGC, but this is a battle that's going on the streets of Tehran and some 31 other provinces around the place. And it's quite hard to use missiles, rockets, aircraft against a battle that's on the streets. And I think that's a challenge that the Americans have got. I don't think it's off the table, but I think that's the challenge they had.
That's right. Well, you mentioned other Arab states who have discouraged the president from taking any military action: Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, and even Israel. However, has America, Colonel Diggins, shown weakness at this juncture? And is it harder to believe Donald Trump's words when he says help is coming and then help is not forthcoming?
There's a possibility of elements of that about it. I think that the Iranians are still very wary of Americans. Lots of other things that the Americans can do. They can use cyber to write down the command and control systems the IRGC and Khomeini's government have got, information operations, identify, most importantly of all, a leader in Iran who they can talk to, who might well be able to unite the country afterwards. And I think all that is still ongoing. So I just note that the last revolution, we always talk about the Iranian Revolution taking place in 1979. It actually started in 1978. I think this thing's got a long way to go. And I think the role of America and the role of the West will be part of that too.
Mr. Moorcoach, there has been some kind of diplomatic to and fro between the White House and the Iranian regime. Is that a good look for the US president, appearing to cut a deal with these autocrats?
Well, cut a deal or reach an agreement. I mean, at some point, we do have to deal with unsavory characters around the world, and Donald Trump much prefers to deal with the flick of his pen than with the launching of missiles. Regardless, though, I mean, the optics are never good when you're sitting down with people who are as contemptible as some of the people involved in this. With that said, though, Trump's objective here is to protect our national strategic interests and also those of our allies. I mean, people like Turkey or Saudi Arabia or other people in that region. And so while he might have one wish optically, he has a responsibility both in security as well as fiduciarily, as well as just in a human nature standpoint, to do what's best for the people involved. If that means meeting with unsavory people, it means he's going to do that regardless of the optics created.
And Errol, the current holder of the Nobel Peace Prize, has gifted her medal to the president. Is the world a safer place with Donald Trump in the White House?
It's absolutely a safer place, whether that be in Ukraine, whether that be in Israel, whether that be throughout African conflicts or around the world. Donald Trump has shown that he's the man who stands up when the situation gets tough. And while his tactics might not always be upfront and very transparent, I think that is a mark of somebody who's actually getting things done. And I think the world has been proven to be a safer place. And while this isn't the direct way to get a Nobel Prize, it certainly speaks to the respect that the current holder has in many of us who feel that he is somebody who deserves that prize in the next go-around.
Although, is this not a man who threatens the future of NATO with his designs on Greenland? Doesn't sound very safe to me, Errol.
Well, only if Greenland wasn't owned by a European colonial empire, then perhaps his designs would be a little bit more nefarious. In that case, though, it's about U.S. security and the fact that nobody there is going to be able to control the situation like the Americans. Unless the EU wants to step up, I think we've been made a very good offer, and we will continue to find a good deal, but there will never be a war against NATO for Greenland.
Caroline Leavitt is the president's chief press spokesperson. Here's what she's said about the situation in Iran.
The president and his team have communicated to the Iranian regime that if the killing continues, there will be grave consequences. And the president received a message, as he revealed to all of you and the whole world yesterday, that the killing and the executions will stop. And the president understands today that 800 executions that were scheduled and supposed to take place yesterday were halted. And so the president and his team are closely monitoring this situation, and all options remain on the table for the president.
And finally, Colonel Simon Diggins, this Iranian regime, which is killing its own people, lives to see another day, doesn't it?
Well, temporarily. I hope it goes as quickly as it can. But I think we just have to recognise that they have been in command and control there for some 30-odd years. The IRGC is extraordinarily powerful, 125,000 plus 90-odd thousand Basij, and they're well integrated in society. So I think there's a lot more to play. As I said, the previous Iranian Revolution, 1979, actually started in 1978. I think we've got a lot more to go, and I think they're going to go. It's just a question of time and continuing.
Are we looking, Colonel Diggins, at months or years, do you think, in your estimation?
I would say we're talking about within a year.
Wow, thank you so much for joining us. My thanks to Colonel Simon Diggins, military and defence analyst, and Errol Moorcoach, who is from Republicans Overseas. Gentlemen, a fascinating conversation. Is it